Courtesy of my roommate, I have a special microphone now. I have no fucking idea how this works. All right, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. So you want to animate, but you don't know where to start. I've been there, I feel you. When I was younger, I wanted to search for the perfect YouTube animation pipeline guide series, but I never quite found it. I wanted to create my own shows and movies, but there was nothing out there that properly helped me do that. So I just had to make do with what I had and teach myself for the rest.
Are you trying to make me look stupid in front of the other guests? I don't need any help.
When the bright lights flashed here in downtown Wuhudu. Fair point.
So in this series, I want to give you guys what I wish I knew when I was just starting out, or if you've already started out but you just want a little bit more knowledge. I want to cover topics of pre-production, visual development, story, characters, asset creation, world building, modeling, and maybe even animation if we get to it. If you guys like this style of content, then be sure to let me know in the description what part of the animation pipeline you want to see next. So let's stop wasting time and let's dive right in. So pre-pro or pre-production starts with story development. You can use some techniques to brainstorm ideas, create mood boards, write things down, or just take a walk, or look at your personal life experiences, because stepping outside of your comfort zone can easily spark some new ideas, and you don't have to worry too much about perfection at this stage. Just try and get all of your ideas down. Once you have kind of a solid idea, then you want to define what genre or theme you're going for. For this series, I didn't want to be too boring and too realistic, so I'm going to give my things a stylized look. So let's design a stylized town with props, buildings, characters, and so much more. Let's dive right in. So first I'm going to assemble a mood board so I can have a pretty good idea of what I want my scene to look like. This is also going to set the tone and time period for a project. Then I'm going to go ahead and follow it up with some model sheets, props, and environments so we can get some relatively good concept art pretty quickly. All right, so as you guys can see, I'm on this website called Milanote. It's a great website for mood boarding. We got some buildings here with nature, rocks, coffee shop props, and we can also add some colors. This website's great because you can move things around with ease. You can add new colors and pretty much plop them down anywhere along with any image or 3D model of your liking. So we're going to utilize this text tool and we're just going to type down the props that we want to make sure we include within our scene. For this stylized town, I wanted to go for ancient architecture, but make it repurposed. And I want some solar punk aesthetic to it. I want a self-sustaining environment with lots of nature. And it's going to be taking place in a coffee shop. I want the feel of the animation to kind of have an orange teal contrast to it. I also wanted to include some seashells because I realized that they make for some great architectural designs. Your characters are the core of your story. You want to define their motivations, their strengths, their weaknesses. How do they grow? What drives them? And if your story is set in a unique world, you want to establish the rules of that world. So for us, that'll help decide what these buildings look like, how modern the technology in this world is, what clothes the characters wear. You want to define your culture and environment within your world. Alright, so we're back here in Adobe Photoshop, and when I first started sketching out the concept for this building, I kept in mind those rustic desert huts and ancient Greek architecture when designing. I used warmer hues to convey a more welcoming and warm feel. As of right now, I'm using built-in Adobe brushes from one of Kyle's collections. I find that varying the thickness and opacity of this brush helps me create quite visually appealing concepts relatively quickly. I built into the solar punk aesthetic by adding some filtration systems, overgrown with wildlife so that there's more organic elements present in the world. Breaking it down further, first you want to sketch out an idea you have for the building with some rough primitive shapes. For this next design, I wanted to go a bit more outlandish and not as simple as the first building. I thought a shell could be a nice touch to maybe suggest that this ancient city was once flooded with an ocean, and after decades of abandonment, the wildlife moved in. Maybe centuries later, some travelers found the city and repurposed it into their natural habitat, bringing technology that helped both the travelers and the wildlife coexist. Now, after you're done with your sketches, you want to go over your lines with some bolder strokes. When coloring, try to stick to a couple more distinct colors. In this case, I used a color palette from my mood board earlier. Another tool that's great for color palette ideas is Adobe Color. My personal favorite is a website called Coolors, which has some of the most visually appealing color palettes I've ever seen. Seriously, this website's great. You should go check it out for some inspiration. Right now, I'm just laying down the base colors for the house. You'll probably notice that I'm using a lot of the same design elements from the first house, and that's intentional. It's because I want everything to feel like it belongs in the same world, and reusing similar designs can help with that. Once the base colors are in, I started layering different hues to break things up and add some variation. Then I usually throw in some darker colors and throw it to multiply, and then when I feel like it's coming all together, I do passive highlights to make everything more cohesive and give it that extra pop. I use the same approach when designing the props. It started out with rough sketches and then drawing over them with cleaner, more confident lines. A small trick I like is playing with the line thickness and opacity to add some depth. You see this in a lot of animated shows and it really helps bring things to life. For this project, I designed a solar-powered espresso machine which is made of brass and runs entirely on rooftop solar panels. When activated, the ancient symbols on the side glow. Which just felt like a cool touch. I also created seashell ceramic coffee cups that have seashell fragments embedded in them, helping to retain heat. They're usually served with coral patterned foam art and a little dish of sugar cubes on the side. To add some atmosphere, I also designed a living chandelier covered in vines, moss, and bioluminescent fungi, which cast a soft, glowy light all over the coffee shop. I also came up with potion bottles of syrup and spices, and I wanted to give them like a repurposed vintage look with some corks and then handwritten labels, just to make everything feel a little bit more old school in some areas. Lastly, I created a hand-carved bone spoon set where each spoon features intricate engravings, and every design is meant to enhance a different type of drink. I love adding little details like this because they help the world feel more lived in. So you establish the story and the character. It's time to create some concept art. Start with some modeling sheets. These show your characters from like different angles, poses, and expressions all in like one sheet. There's usually a front, a side, and sometimes a back profile for these characters. These are supposed to help keep it consistent, and you want to make sure to capture their personality. And you want to make these unique so that you can easily identify your character when it's black and white. At this stage, you can usually design your character a certain way to make them either aggressive or more passive looking. For example, circles tend to create more bubbly and cute characters, and triangles create villains and bad guys. It's just things that are good to know when creating the hero or the villain of your story. For the characters, I started out the same way, with a rough sketch that I cleaned up using dark line art. But before getting into the details, I blocked out the character using primitive shapes like circles, squares, and cylinders. I like figuring out the shape language early on because it makes things way easier down the road. The shape of the character can say a lot about their personality, and when it comes to storyboarding and animating, it can make things go a lot quicker. Once the sketch was solid, I pulled a color palette from that site that I mentioned earlier, blocked in the base colors, and followed the same shading process as before, building up some hues, then layering shadows, and then adding some highlights to tie it all together. Finally, getting started on model sheet, I made sure to include a front and a side view. These serve for some pretty solid references when 3D modeling. To keep all the key features matching up between the different angles, I drew alignment lines all across the character. I also added a scale reference which helps maintain the character's height consistency compared to the rest of the world. To make sure the character reads clearly, I did a silhouette pass that I included at the bottom of the page, and I added 5 expressions to capture different emotions. It's all about making sure your character feels right from every angle and stays consistent even in extreme poses. At this point, I wanted to remind you guys how important it is to organize your files. I know a lot of this is just boring stuff, but I promise it's all important and it's gonna make your job way easier in the future. I was one of those people that always just typed in random letters and numbers. Trust me, it's a terrible idea. But within the industry, it gets complicated so quick. And it's really important for other team members to understand what scene you're working on and what they're actually opening up. In this series, I'm gonna try and show you guys the way I was taught to organize my files, because a lot of YouTube video series also don't cover it. Try to make sure you also have a clear sequence of the tasks that you're about to do. If you want to take on a project, it's really important that you have a plan so that there's a smooth transition between each step. A lot of upfront work goes into making sure that you're just set up right. But if you do a lot of the heavy lifting now, it will make your job easier in the long run. So let's talk about software. In this series, we're going to be using Autodesk Maya, but if you're on a budget, Blender can do the exact same things. The interface is relatively similar. You just need to make sure that your hardware is up to the task. I was trying to do things on a 10-year-old gaming PC, and if you're working on higher quality models, larger scenes for your games or animation, sculpting, yeah, you just want to make sure that your hardware is up to the task. So that's it for this video, guys. I had a blast making it, and I love sharing what I learned throughout my artistic journey with you guys. I was mostly self-taught, but my college took my experience to the next level, and so that's why I want to help artists also looking into getting into the industry or just college who maybe feel nervous about starting. But next time, we're going to take everything that we've done so far and put it into 3D. We will cover modeling, UV, texturing, shading, and more. If you guys want to see a more in-depth look at my life, make sure to check out my other video. It's all about my life and the creative process that I go through. I'm going to go ahead and link that in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.